Imagine climbing into a race car so terrifying that even some of the world's best drivers wanted nothing to do with it. A machine so brutally fast and so unstable that people genuinely believed it was only a matter of time before it killed someone. Yet just 1 year later, that exact same car would conquer the biggest endurance race on Earth and rewrite motorsport history forever. This is the incredible story of the 1970 Porsche 917, a car that went from being labeled a widowmaker to becoming one of the greatest racing machines ever built. And the craziest part? It wasn't more power that made the difference. It was one surprisingly simple change that transformed a terrifying monster into a Le Mans legend. By the late 1960s, Porsche had already built a reputation for producing brilliant sports cars and winning races in smaller classes. But there was one achievement that continued to slip through its fingers: an overall victory at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. They had come painfully close several times, but close wasn't good enough. Then the FIA introduced new regulations for 5-liter sports prototypes. While most manufacturers hesitated, Porsche's engineering chief, Ferdinand Piëch, saw an opportunity. He approved one of the boldest projects in racing history, spending enormous amounts of money to build 25 identical race cars just to satisfy the homologation rules. It was a huge financial gamble, but if it worked, Porsche would finally have the fastest car on the grid. The result was the Porsche 917. On paper, it looked almost unbeatable. It featured an incredibly light tubular chassis made from exotic materials, wrapped in sleek bodywork, and powered by a screaming flat 12 engine producing well over 580 horsepower. As development continued, output climbed beyond 600 horsepower. Today, those numbers might not sound extraordinary, but remember, this car weighed around 800 kilograms. Its power-to-weight ratio was outrageous for 1969. On the long Mulsanne Straight at Le Mans, the 917 reached speeds that left competitors looking stationary. It was one of the fastest race cars the world had ever seen. But there was one enormous problem. Nobody wanted to drive it. The first time experienced Porsche drivers pushed the 917 to its limits, they came back shaken. At high speed, the rear of the car became frighteningly light. The car wandered across the circuit, forcing drivers to make constant corrections just to keep it pointing in the right direction. Imagine driving at well over 200 miles per hour while feeling like the rear tires barely wanted to touch the road. That is exactly what many drivers described. Then came Le Mans in 1969. Privateer John Wolfe crashed his 917 on the opening lap and tragically lost his life. Although several factors contributed to the accident, the crash reinforced the growing belief that the Porsche 917 was simply too dangerous. Even factory drivers often preferred Porsche's older 908 because it inspired far more confidence. The 917 had incredible speed, but speed alone does not win a 24-hour race if drivers cannot trust the car beneath them. At this point, it looked like Porsche's biggest gamble had failed. But here's where the story takes an incredible turn. Instead of throwing away the project, Porsche partnered closely with John Wyer's Gulf Racing team. During testing, engineer John Horseman noticed something unusual. Dirt and dead insects covered the front of the car, but the rear bodywork stayed remarkably clean. That tiny observation revealed a massive aerodynamic problem. Air was not flowing where engineers expected. Instead of creating stability, it was generating lift. The solution wasn't a bigger engine or more complicated technology. It was a redesigned rear body. Engineers shortened the tail, raised its shape, and dramatically increased rear stability. The new version became known as the 917K, with the K standing for Kurzheck, or short tail. Drivers immediately noticed the difference. What had once felt unpredictable suddenly became confidence-inspiring. They could attack corners harder, stay flat through sections that previously required lifting off the throttle, and finally exploit the unbelievable performance Porsche had built into the chassis. It was still incredibly fast, but now it was also controllable. And that brings us to 1970, Le Mans. The race Porsche had spent decades trying to win. Standing in their way was Ferrari with the new 512S, setting up one of endurance racing's greatest rivalries. Expectations were enormous, but endurance racing has never been about pure speed. Reliability, weather, teamwork, and patience matter just as much. The race itself became a battle of survival. Heavy rain soaked the circuit. Cars spun off. Mechanical failures piled up. Some of the fastest machines were eliminated one after another. Porsche's quickest entries suffered problems too. The spectacular, long-tail 917S looked unbeatable in qualifying, but reliability issues struck during the race. Meanwhile, Hans Hermann and Richard Atwood quietly kept circulating in their red and white Porsche Salzburg 917K. They weren't chasing headlines. They were protecting the car, avoiding unnecessary risks, and letting the race come to them. Hour after hour, competitors disappeared. Ferraris dropped out. Other Porsches encountered mechanical issues. But the number 23 Porsche simply kept going. When the checkered flag finally fell after 24 brutal hours, history had been made. Porsche had finally won Le Mans outright for the very first time. The car that many believed was too dangerous to race had delivered the greatest victory in the company's history. But the story didn't end there. Once the aerodynamic problems were solved, the Porsche 917 became almost unstoppable. During the 1970 World Sports Car Championship, it dominated the competition, winning 7 of the season's 8 races. Then it returned in 1971 and did it all again, claiming another Le Mans victory while setting a distance record that stood for nearly 4 decades. It became so successful that changing the regulations was effectively the only way to stop it. After 1971, the FIA's new rules ended the 917's eligibility in World Championship endurance racing. Yet even then, its career wasn't over. Turbocharged versions went to North America, where they produced over 1,000 horsepower in Can-Am competition and continued embarrassing the opposition. Today, the Porsche 917 isn't remembered because it was perfect. It's remembered because it wasn't. It began life as a deeply flawed machine that terrified the very people paid to drive it. Instead of giving up, Porsche's engineers listened, experimented, admitted their mistakes, and transformed the car into one of the greatest racing machines ever created. That's what makes the 917 legendary. Not just its victories, not just its incredible speed, but the journey from fear to domination. Every time you see the iconic Gulf Blue and Orange 917K or the famous red and white Salzburg winner, remember this. Behind those beautiful curves is a story of relentless engineering, unbelievable bravery, and one simple aerodynamic breakthrough that changed motorsport forever. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson of all. Sometimes the difference between failure and immortality isn't building something completely new. It's having the courage to fix what everyone else has already given up on.